And currently, these big chicken producers are not held accountable for the waste that they produce. They don't pay into the Bay Restoration Fund like all other Maryland residents do. In fact, they get tax dollars to deal with their waste. So we think this is a huge problem, and here in Baltimore, we've gathered over 1,500 petitions from Baltimore residents, and we're asking Delegate McIntosh to support this bill, the Poultry Fair Share Act, which would require the chicken industry to contribute to the Bay Restoration Fund to account for the pollution that they produce. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to have our panelists here. The way the forum is going to work is our panelists will each talk for a few minutes. I'll ask them a few questions. And then at 8 o'clock, the forum will be open to audience questions and statements. And in terms of that, we just ask that your comments remain respectful on the topic of farm pollution in the Bay, and that you don't take more than 2 to 3 minutes of floor time, just so we want to make sure everyone gets to speak.
Perspective. So this bill is important, and it would do something that hasn't been done before, but we do recognize that it is not going to solve the problem of the unsustainability issue of big chicken on the Eastern Shore. So it is something that's a step in the direction of where we want to go, but we do recognize it's not something that's going to solve all of our problems. It's a first step. The reason why we have been focusing on getting people to talk about this issue here in Baltimore and not on the shore is that there's two legislators here, Maggie McIntosh and Joan Carter Conway, who sit on very important committees, so they actually chair the committees. Maggie McIntosh is the chairwoman of the Environmental Matters Committee, and Senator Joan Carter Conway is chair of the Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee. And they have typically blocked a lot of the legislation that Food and Water Watch tries to pass to make factory farming more sustainable and anti-pollution measures. And so we really want to organize people to basically demand that they start doing the right thing. And that's why we're specifically in Baltimore. The bigger picture for the agriculture campaign, Julia was nice enough to mention some of the other things Food and Water Watch works on. But in Baltimore, I'm going to be here for the long term, and we're really very intentionally and very specifically focusing on ag and very specifically focusing on big chicken and what that needs to look like and what it should look like for any kind of sustainable future. And so we don't have all the answers for what their place should be and what sustainability looks like, but there is a basic vision. And this report, actually, that Food and Water Watch issued a couple years ago, unfortunately, I only have one copy, but it is online. If you go to foodandwaterwatch.org, you can download all of the reports for free online. It's the economic cost of food monopolies. This lays out the bigger picture vision better than I could in a couple minutes. But the idea is that, with a lot of visioning, you have to think of something that does not yet exist and describe that and make that vision real. In this case, we're actually looking at bringing Maryland back to what it was, and the Eastern Shore back to what it was before big chicken landed there and pushed everyone out. And so the Eastern Shore used to actually have quite a diversity of agriculture going on, including a very large quantity of fruits and vegetables and feed crops. And this report, basically the premise of it is that not only would this be much more sustainable, produce healthier products, healthier food for people, but would allow any space at all for small and mid-sized farmers to exist, and would allow those small and mid-sized farmers to actually make a living and not be locked in debt for the rest of their lives. So that's kind of the bigger picture that we're working towards. And I'm really, really excited to hear your thoughts about that and to engage all of you as we move forward and this takes shape. So thank you.
I was in a worker cooperative, and by trade, I'm a cybersecurity professional. So I kind of have a wealth of back and forth there. I've also worked with a couple of economic justice organizations. such as KZM Baltimore, Solidarity, the New Economy Foundation, and I always leave a couple out. Well, sorry if I left someone out here with that organization. I'm really happy to be here, and I really appreciate Julia and Food and Water Watch inviting me here today. It's really great because I think that, as Julie just mentioned, that there's so many economic justice issues here for the farmers, and there's a lot of environmental justice issues and sustainability issues here for the Bay. I remember about earlier this year, or maybe last year, there was a report that the mayor's office was considering putting a beach where the carousel was down in the Inner Harbor. Could you imagine someone wanting to go near, it's even possibly their toe touching the water in the Inner Harbor? I mean, it's absolutely insane. So I'm really glad to be here today to talk a little bit about some of the innovative ways we can move from this very, very horrible food monopoly approach that the big chicken companies force these small farmers into when they really don't have any better options. And I'm really grateful to be here today with this awesome panel.
But basically we're a collective with a core group, I'd say, of about 15 people. We have meetings every other Tuesday. There's one going on right now. And I'm really glad to be here tonight to be part of this conversation. I myself am an aspiring full-time farmer. Right now I'm working with a family business, but the Free Farm has allowed me space to learn and grow next to other people. We are located in Woodbury, Hamden area on Ash Street. Our land is a mosaic of different issues going on. One, we have a formal agreement with the city where we're renting it out for $1 a year. That particular lot is basically being used for our community garden plots. So if you live in the neighborhood or anywhere close enough, you can rent out a small plot to grow vegetables in. And then there's some other land around there that we're farming with the agreement of the landowners. So we're kind of living in a transitional area, but we stand for social justice. We stand for sustainability and community-powered agriculture. We do have chickens that we keep for laying eggs. We can maybe go through a couple of the photographs. The first, can you go back to the first one right quick? Mm-hmm. That's Yog. So some of our chickens have names. We have 9 chickens in total. Our coop is probably about 20 feet by 15 feet or so. So that's Yog as a little baby, and these are little chicks last spring that we were able to bring up. You can go on to the next photograph. So we're getting eggs. You can go on. The baby on the left there is a full-grown chick that we brought up from this spring. And Fluffy Poof is seen on the right there with the feathers on his feet. And then the next image is that's an adult Yog, and then Nyar. So those are some of our birds. They have lots of personality to them, and they're kind of like our pets. You know, we have a direct, connection to our food. We're able to make sure that they have a good space to live. It's actually becoming more and more popular in the city to own chickens. Matter of fact, it's more lenient for the city, a city resident, to own chickens than, for example, Baltimore County. So it's kind of picking up. The Dogma pet store down the street is selling chicken feed, and so it's kind of like another thing that's happening. But what I'd kind of like to just mention is we're not in any means a production farm. We are selling to a few local businesses down the street, but what we're trying to do for the most part is inspire and educate on how we can make sustainable choices with our food. It's a very empowering experience to have that direct connection from the seed to your plate. That to see that whole process has been very enlightening for me, and so I'm a proponent of that. And I do see some familiar faces. We have interns in the summertime, and John's here. Can you hold your hand up? John was a big help for us as far as outreach and community gathering, Hopkins student. And Sue, I see as a plot holder on our plot there, so it's great to see you there. And I just looking forward to being part of this experience here, and thanks for coming out.
Majoring in public health and global environmental change and sustainability. And so I'm part of a student group that we call Real Food Hopkins, which is working on a lot of different issues related to some of the injustices we see in our food system. A lot of us come from majoring in very similar issues where we're learning about these things in our classes, learning about the problems and potential solutions as well. And so one of our biggest initiatives this year has been to try to convince our university to make a commitment to purchasing food from better sources. And so we recently had a signing with our president that he committed to, by 2020, purchasing at least 35% what we call real food. And that means that it's at least either local or community-based, ecologically sound, so it could be organic, but it might not be certified organic, fair trade, or humanely raised. And so one of the biggest things that we see this as is a way of Hopkins investing in the local economy to kind of supporting the infrastructure necessary to making these changes that we see as really important. And so, for instance, the chicken that we now buy is from Pennsylvania, actually, because I think it's a more humanely sourced farm, Murray's Chicken. I'm not very familiar with that farm, but I know like all our beef is now grass-fed. So we're trying to push our university because we realize that changing our individual habits isn't going to be enough to institute the things that we want to see in the broader food system. And with our pressure as students on the university, we can have a really big impact if all the college students around the area do the same. So that's one of the things that we see this bill as important, is because it's going to help the small farmers that we want to support better compete with the big ag farmers that we don't necessarily agree with how they're treating the bay.